You probably learned a simple rule about the origins of humanity. Men hunted, women gathered. Makes sense, right? It's what history books have told us for centuries. But what if I told you that the foundation of our evolutionary society is a translation error? In 2020, in the Andes Mountains of Peru, archaeologists made a discovery that broke the timeline. They found a 9,000-year-old grave in Willamaya, Pacha. Inside, the remains of an elite hunter. The body was buried with a complete heavy hunting kit, stone projectile points, knives, and meat processing tools. The complete package of an alpha predator. For decades, archaeology had an automatic default. Found heavy weapons in a grave? It's a man, a warrior. That's what they assumed this time, too. Until bioarchaeology and peptide analysis of the bones revealed the biological sex of the alpha hunter. It was a female, an early woman buried with the honors of the tribe's greatest hunter. And she wasn't an isolated case. A massive study led by the University of Washington reviewed data from dozens of foraging societies around the world. The conclusion? In nearly 80% of these societies, women hunted, and they intentionally hunted large game. In the wild, survival didn't care about gender roles. If you could run and throw, you hunted. The group needed calories, not social rules. So the big question is, if women were always lethal weapons on the front lines of survival, why did modern science decide to erase them from history? What were we trying to hide? Science likes to consider itself purely objective, but it has a fatal blind spot: the brain of the person practicing it. To understand why the early woman was reduced to an extra in our own evolution, we need to look at who was holding the pen. Go back to the 19th and early 20th centuries, the cradle of modern archaeology. Who was funding the excavations, holding the shovels, and publishing the books? They were overwhelmingly men of Victorian high society, a culture where women wore corsets, embroidered, and belonged strictly in the parlor. When these pioneers unearthed the past, they didn't see the Stone Age. They saw a mirror of their own society. They projected the head of the household and the housewife directly onto the African savanna. Their method wasn't based on biology. It was guesswork, fueled by bias. Found a body with a bone needle? Clearly a female grave. She sewed. Found a body with a spear or a crushed skull? Male warrior, without a doubt. They didn't test the DNA of the bones. They simply assumed. In 1966, this bias stopped being just an opinion and became academic dogma. A massive anthropological symposium called Man the Hunter took place in Chicago. This event dictated what would be taught in schools for the next 5 decades. Their thesis was simple and seductive. Hunting large animals required communication, tools, and planning. Therefore, hunting was the engine that made the human brain evolve. And since only men hunted, men built civilization. Women? They were relegated to the role of passive incubators, waiting in the cave. But stop and think about how nature actually works. Imagine the Pleistocene, the Ice Age. Starvation wasn't a possibility, it was a constant. Infant mortality was brutal. In this scenario of extreme survival, where every extra calorie determined life and death, it seems surreal that a tribe of Homo sapiens would afford the luxury of dismissing 50% of its healthy, agile adults from participating in the search for protein. When modern scientists began to question this narrative, the illusion crumbled. Researchers focused on tangible evidence, not assumptions. In 2023, a monumental study led by anthropologist Dr. Kara Okabach from the University of Notre Dame discovered what would turn evolutionary biology upside down. The female body wasn't just capable of hunting. For the specific type of hunting our ancestors practiced, women were biologically superior. The human body didn't evolve to fight. We don't have claws. We don't have sharp fangs. We are weak. But we have an evolutionary superpower: sweat. We evolved to run under the scorching sun, tracking prey for hours until it dies from hyperthermia and exhaustion. This is called persistence hunting. It's how humanity survived. And when you analyze the engineering required for this kind of extreme endurance, the female body has a mechanical and chemical advantage. It all comes down to fuel. Men, on average, have more fast-twitch muscle mass, type 2 fibers. This is perfect for a sprint, perfect for explosive strength. But sprinting burns glycogen. It's a volatile fuel. It burns fast and runs out fast. When glycogen hits zero, the engine shuts down. It is the famous hitting the wall for marathon runners. Female biology runs on a different operating system. Estrogen isn't just a reproductive hormone. It is an elite energy modulator. Thanks to higher estrogen levels, the female body is programmed to burn fat as its primary energy source during prolonged effort. Fat is a long-lasting battery. This means that at mile 20 of a savanna hunt, when male glycogen is hitting its limit, the female metabolism is still steadily accessing deep energy reserves. And there's more: the muscle structure itself. Physiological studies confirm that women have a higher proportion of type 1 muscle fibers, the slow-twitch fibers. They don't generate an explosive burst of strength, but they take much longer to fatigue. They are built to not stop. Add to this the female hip structure. For a long time, they said that wider hips hindered locomotion. False. Modern biomechanics show that this structure allows for a longer stride relative to height, saving caloric energy over long distances. Dr. Kara Okabach and her team proved the point. For the type of hunting that built the human species, tracking and exhausting prey over days, female biology wasn't a burden. It was the perfect endurance machine. Early women weren't sitting in the cave waiting for the meat to arrive. They were on the front lines, coordinating, sweating, and running until the prey collapsed. But this raises the final and perhaps the biggest question of all. If women, even pregnant or breastfeeding, were hunting large game, who was in the cave taking care of the babies? The answer destroys our modern vision of the family. If the woman was hunting, tracking, and running for days on the savanna, who was holding the baby? When we ask this question, we stumble upon our last great bias. We project the modern family, locked in an apartment, directly onto the Stone Age. Father, mother, and children in their own private cave. But human evolution didn't work in isolated nuclei. It operated in networks. The answer to who took care of the children is simple. Literally the entire rest of the tribe. In evolutionary biology, this has a name: alloparenting, or cooperative parental care. When a mother grabbed her spear, the child was not left helpless. They were handed over to a highly complex social structure: older siblings, recovering hunters, and, most importantly, the elders. This is where one of the most fascinating concepts in anthropology comes in: the grandmother hypothesis, popularized by the studies of Dr. Kristen Hawkes at the University of Utah. Think about it. We are one of the only mammals on Earth where females live for decades after the end of their reproductive capacity. Why would evolution keep alive a body that can no longer bear children? The answer is that menopause was a tactical advantage. Grandmothers were the tribe's pillar of security. Free from the risks of pregnancy and extreme hunts, they took on the intensive care of grandchildren and the processing of complex foods. They were the group's survival database. While the mother ran 20 kilometers to take down prey, the child was perfectly safe. The baby wasn't the isolated responsibility of one woman. It was the most valuable and protected asset of the entire tribe. The idea that the early woman was fragile, trapped in solitary motherhood, and dependent on a male provider is a recent invention. It is a cultural anomaly of the last few thousand years, born with agriculture and private property. For over 90% of Homo sapiens' history, the dynamic was different. The woman was the active architect of our survival, fierce in persistence hunting, biologically optimized for extreme endurance, and the engine of the social brain that kept the species alive against all odds. When we look to the past trying to find biological justifications for the rules imposed by our modern society, we don't just distort science, we erase our own nature.
The true history of humanity is not about strong men who built the world while women watched from the back of the cave. It is about a species that only escaped extinction because in Earth's most unforgiving moment, it used absolutely all the strength it had. And half of that strength, for millennia, had the face of a woman.
If you seek answers not found in traditional history books, subscribe. The Evolution of Ancestral Life in 2 weekly videos.